Welcome back to Paranormal Patio. If you're just stumbling across this episode, make sure you find all of our other episodes on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, except for Apple. It's a personal decision. You can also find information from all of our past guests, as well as all of our episodes, at paranormalpatio.com. And of course, you can find us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook for Paranormal Patio, and we will have updates and articles and all kinds of good stuff, as well as notifications as to when you can listen to the newest episode. I've just had a long talk with the Beyond Sight Studios crew for this episode, and I love when I don't expect a connection to my personal research, and it happens, and it's great, and it happened tonight. And the first story that they're going to tell you is pretty wild and had me on the edge of my seat, and I think you'll enjoy it. So, without further ado, here's the Paranormal Patio.
You're listening to the Paranormal Patio Podcast. Pull up a chair.
Welcome back to Paranormal Patio. As always, I am Jason, and I am joined tonight. Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this one for a long time. We're talking tonight with the Beyond Sight project, Beyond Sight Studios. And I found a long time ago, probably right when you put it out, I found the video on YouTube of the mushroom cave.
Oh, yeah.
And that was what got me onto your stuff. And then you had a little run there where you were putting some stuff up, and then it's been silent. What's been going on down there?
Oh, man. So that is pretty much when we first started, Beyond Sight project and really getting into the film aspects of it. We had many plans to do a lot of stuff, and kind of a lot of that is sort of gotten derailed a little bit. We really wouldn't say we got away from it, but because it is stuff we still want to do. But, pandemic happened, made it harder to go places and film. And then we started getting into some of the other stuff like we're currently working on with the studio stuff. And yeah, I don't really know, man. It's, I'd like to get back into it for sure, but.
Well, let's take it back. And what made you guys decide to start even getting into the stuff?
Me personally, I've always, been interested in this stuff, ghost, paranormal, pretty much anything, UFOs, whatever. And so I always lean that way anyways. But then really, I kind of look at it as sort of the catalyst of really what jump started us into what the stuff we're doing now was, Hellier, which I'm sure your followers are familiar with. And
I've never heard of it. Tell me more.
Some weird people in Somerset and Eastern Kentucky. It's
yes.
Just a bunch of weirdos,
Yeah.
Yes. They're all great though.
Oh yeah. Amazing people. Like every one of them pretty much. But yeah, man, when Hellier came out and, especially, the second season, and, that really is when everything kind of changed for us. And we, started this new chapter of our lives, or I just like to refer to it as our new lives, where we left our old ones behind. But
yeah, which sounds super dramatic, but, I never expected something like this to happen from a docu-series, a paranormal one even. And I've been into this stuff for a really long time too. I don't know, like a docu-series, and it just was like synchronicities for us too.
Yeah.
And it was just something that we couldn't really ignore, even if we wanted to. And it just kept going from there.
Yeah. Once we watched Hellier, the second season, we live in Kentucky too. We're about an hour north of Somerset. So you could imagine our surprise when we were watching the second season, and then, here they are going to Somerset talking about cults and all these caves and goblins. And,
yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So, even after season one, I'm from Pikeville. So that's like the far eastern part of the state, Pike County, which is where Hellier is.
Yeah.
I grew up in Pike County in Pikeville. So I knew a lot of the places they went to in season 1, and I just thought it was, cool as hell anyways. Like, here's a documentary about Eastern Kentucky and they're chasing goblins. That's not usually something you hear about from people in that area,
Yeah.
So we ended up going to a couple of locations, like the Pine Mountain Train Tunnel they went to at the end of season 1, stuff like that. And so season 2 was the perfect opportunity where we're like, Somerset's an hour south from us. We can be there in no time. It's like, we have got to go down there and check out some of these spots. And like, number one, I never knew that area had so many cave systems, like the entire thing's basically just a huge cave system. And right. I never realized that, So, and then also the museum, I was like, I never knew there was a paranormal museum just an hour away from us that we could be checking out, There's a lot of stuff like that where we were just like, we wanted to go down there and kind of see some of the locations. But then really our first trip down there is when I feel like we really got sucked into it all and couldn't really ignore like what was in front of us anymore, where we had gone down like right after we had finished watching season 2 of Hellier. We went down, our plan was to go to the museum, meet Kyle, hopefully, and talk to him a little bit. And then we had found some coordinates to a cave in Somerset. And it was a cave that we believed was one of the caves that the Hellier crew went in. So we wanted to go find that cave and kind of check it out. And, the stuff that happened to us on that trip and we experienced it was nothing short of mind-blowing, really, especially then. And even now, when we think back on it, it's all just kind of crazy.
Well, you can't leave me hanging with that. We have to go into that.
Right. This is going to be a pretty long spiel here. So
I am fine with it.
I'll try my best to keep it nice and clean, but I might ramble a little bit too. But, so number one, what really started it was we hadn't finished season 2 yet, but we were almost done with it. And just by watching it and kind of doing a little bit of research while we were watching it, like we started seeing other stuff too that like wasn't in, the documentary, but, we were kind of finding out. So then that made us even more curious about it. And so then we started looking up some of these locations and stuff. And we ended up finding the coordinates to a cave. And like I said, we thought it was one of the caves that the Hellier crew went to. So what I did, and just, in aforementioned here, like I know how ridiculous and stupid this sounds in retrospect. But I took the coordinates to the cave, and it also came like with a little, satellite image of the area with a marker put on the spot. So instead of taking the coordinates and typing those directly into my phone, I just looked at the image and then I pulled up my own map app on my phone and kind of matched the images to where they were roughly the same size. And I kind of just took my finger and guessed where I thought the marker was. No part of me at the time doing this thought that was a bad idea. It was like, I was perfectly fine with it, and I even had the thought is like, well, it's not exact, but it's close enough. And this is a cave, like a big cave. We'll find it. We'll see it, if we get remotely in that area. And again, we were planning to go to a place we've never been, out in the middle of the woods where no one knows we're going, and search for a cave. You would think you would want it to be as exact as possible, right?
That's not how we do it. We're
right. Yeah.
Right.
So that's what I did for the cave entrance. So our first stop there, like I said, we wanted to go to the museum and hopefully meet Kyle and just kind of ask him some questions about, the Hellier guys and, what he thought about all of it and everything. So we went to the museum. Kyle was there, so we did talk to him. And, super cool guy. He's amazing. And just, I always tell people who ask me, like anything, if I know about anything, I'm just like, you should ask Kyle. Like, he is a wealth of just weird knowledge,
Absolutely.
But it's great, though. But we ended up talking to him for longer than we had really anticipated. And he also told us to go check out the town square where they had, the obelisk and the fountain and everything that they mentioned in Hellier. So we ended up doing that too, which put us even further behind our schedule, or what we had of a schedule. So then to drive out to the cave, it was about a 20-minute drive, something like that. So we get out there, and like I said, we've never been here before. We don't know any of these places. And this particular cave, it's just you can barely call it a road. It's broken up in a lot of places where it's gravel, one of those kind of things, just one lane. If you meet a car, you're just screwed. But we're taking this road just seemingly out into the middle of nowhere. And the whole time I'm looking at the marker that I had placed on my map, and I'm trying to figure out as close as we can get to the marker, to make it as short a trip as possible for us. And, so we come to a spot, and I'm just like, okay, right here, this is fine. This is good enough, as close as we'll be able to get to it. So we parked there, and we kind of sat in the car for a couple minutes just listening, because we had the windows rolled down. Yeah, the first thing we noticed was that it was just dead quiet, no sounds at all, no insects, no birds, nothing. Which, now that we've researched a lot of this stuff more, that's one of the signs that pretty much everyone tells about some weird experience they had. It just goes dead quiet. You can't hear anything. So that already was, kind of spooky, but we didn't really think much of it until we got out of the car. And then we were getting our packs and kind of surveying this hillside, because we were going to have to climb this hill to get into the woods wherever this cave was. And when we went to get our packs and put them on, the silence was broken by a whistle, and it kind of sounded like a bird, but more like something mimicking a bird.
Or an alarm. Or, something more mechanical.
It didn't sound natural, but it sounded like it was supposed to be a bird or something, if that makes any sense. Yeah, but we listened to this thing, and it was sort of just this monotone pitch of just this, set intervals of this whistle. And it was really strange, and we just kind of stopped and looked at each other, and it went on for, I would say, at least 30 seconds. And then when it was over, we just kind of looked at each other and were like, well, that's a little bit weird. And I think I even kind of jokingly was like, well, they know we're here now. But we had to push on. We weren't going to turn around or anything. So we start up this hillside, and this is an area that's just completely a wild area. There are no hiking trails or paths or anything.
Overgrown.
Yeah. You basically, no matter which way you go, you're going to have to make your own path. So again, I was just kind of trying to keep us on a straight line with the marker that I had laid down, because I figured, there are no paths here. We don't want to get stuck in the woods. Let's just try to get there in a straight line as we can, and, then go on our way. So we start up the hillside, and, I keep emphasizing the straight line part, because it is really important, and which I'll kind of double back to. But every movement that we're making is, I have my map out looking at this marker and making sure we are going in a straight path towards it. So we're going up this hillside, and we get about halfway up it, and I kind of look ahead and notice the trees, 2 trees have sort of fallen over to make an X.
A perfect X.
Yeah.
It's a very symmetrical looking X.
Almost
big
perfect.
Trees.
And, we've been in the woods a lot, especially since all this, and I still have never really seen trees that naturally fall together in such a perfect way. Usually if a tree is fallen, it'll catch something else at a weird angle, or there'll be more than 2.
Was pushed up instead of down.
They were both pushed almost directly just over.
Right.
They had both fallen completely over. But I'll get to that in a second. So when we notice this X, it's directly in our path, in a straight line, the way we're walking is this just weird looking X. And we kind of stop and look at it, and then we start to hear some footsteps. And it's just a deer, but a deer comes walking like kind of up towards the top of the hill. Like it walks from our field of view from like our left, walks into our frame to the right, and then kind of stops. And it stops almost directly underneath this X that we had just stopped and noticed. And we're like, well, that's weird. So now just a deer appears and stops right underneath the X.
Then we're like, well, that's weird.
And
hello, Pan.
You're right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And the way that, it just kind of slowly walked just nonchalantly and then stopped under this X and then just kind of slowly turned its head and looked at us. And like this deer was just staring at us then.
Like we had a staring contest for about a good 20 seconds.
Yeah, at least 20 seconds. Like we just were like, okay, well, what do we do now? Like this is all starting to kind of pile up of the weirdness factor. But this deer is just looking at us, and I'm like, okay, well, we can't just stand here all night looking at this deer. Like, we've got to go. So we start up the hill, and, I thought, like, once we started moving towards it, like, it would, run away. But it kind of just sort of still sat there staring at us for a few seconds, and then just slowly just walked off into the distance. Like, it just, like, it just didn't even care. Like, we weren't even there or something. Then we get up to where the X and the deer were. And, the whole way up, I'm still looking at the X and I'm like, this just seems strange. Like it's such a perfect looking X. And like there were no other trees that had really fallen in the area to make it look like it could have been like storm damage or something like that. It was literally just these two trees. So we get up there and, we're looking around the base of the trees and the tree on the right, I was like amazed because I couldn't find any damage on the tree at all. Like it literally looked like it had just been uprooted, like it had just been pushed over. And, both of these trees, like they're not massive trees, but I mean, they're trees.
Tall.
Yeah. They're really tall, but not super thick. But this, looking at the roots and everything pointing up, it looked like it had just been pushed over. So then we looked at the tree on the other side and it was much the same way. Like it literally looked like something had just come along and pushed them over to form this X.
Right. Not like they were leaning down towards like gravity, but they were leaning more like they were intentionally pushed.
Yeah. And there was really, when I was kind of looking at the tops a little more, there was really only like one spot that these two trees could have come together and stayed that way, so like it all seemed really intentional, but I mean, I'm no tree expert or anything. Like I guess it totally could have just been a, storm or something, but it didn't look that way to us. It didn't feel that way, especially after the deer seemed to like that spot so much. But we were looking at the trees and then, I noticed on the ground there was something there. So I walked over to it a few feet away and picked it up, and it was a tin can. And, there was a tin can. And, like I said, this is directly after we had just finished Hellier. So all of that is super fresh in our minds. That's literally why we're there,
right.
And there's a tin can laying there. And I'm like, okay.
Like next to the X. Like it was.
Yeah, well, we actually found two of them up there. The first one I saw was a few feet away. But when I saw it, like I walked over, like kind of underneath the X, directly under it, like where the deer would have been standing, and there was another tin can. And that's the one that like really blew me away. And I'm like, okay, like what is really going on here? Like,
but I mean, this place wasn't trashed or anything. It didn't seem like a heavily trafficked place. Like, there's like no trails or anything.
Wasn't a lot of litter.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this isn't a trail or anything. Like there's, seemingly no reason someone would be there or, would find their way to that spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here are these two tin cans. So, we thought that was weird. And then after we kind of snooped around that place for a few minutes, but then we were like, okay, like it's getting later, like later than I would have liked. because we spent so much time at the museum and then at the fountain and everything. So I'm like, we've got to keep going. Like, we've got to find this cave. Like, that's what we came here for. Like, we can think about all this other stuff, when we get home. But so we reach the top of the hill, and then we start to go down on the other side. Like, we kind of had to crest it and then go back down. So, like, while we're going down the other side, nothing eventful happens for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or something. But we're going down, and then I notice, up ahead that there's something kind of buried in the leaves. And as soon as I see it, like, I know what it is, but like my brain isn't like thinking that. Like, I remember my first thought being like, there's no way that's a balloon. That's like a bag of like potting soil or something. Like, never mind the fact we're in the middle of the woods. Like, why would there be a bag of potting soil there, But that's what my brain told me.
Well, it's just trying to make logic out of it, like.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, and especially after the other stuff, too. I'm like, okay, like, what, what is this? But we get closer, and I know, like, I walk right up to it, and it's a balloon. It's a Mylar, or what is it?
Mylar, yeah.
Mylar balloon. And I pick it up, and it says "Happy Birthday" on it.
Wow!
Like, it's a pretty silver one with like colorful letters.
Yeah,
I
think it was like Lego print or something. There were like Lego shapes on it. You can actually see the balloon if you go to the museum. We donated it, and one of the tin cans, or maybe both of them, to Kyle. So he's got.
I will definitely be seeing those soon.
Yeah, he's got them displayed in the museum there. But so I pick up the balloon, and I'm just looking at it, just like I floored, like I have no idea like what's going on or what to think. And Jessica was like a little bit away from me. Yeah. And I call her over to look at it, and then like the look on her face when she walks over to me and sees this balloon, is priceless. But we're holding it up, looking at it like, okay, like what the hell is, like, what's going on? Like, is this stuff really happening, or like what does it all mean? And this is when one of the, the other stuff's weird, but this is
like the most memorable one for me, for sure.
Yeah. Once I pick the balloon up, I've been holding it maybe 10, 15 seconds. We hear footsteps behind us. Footsteps directly behind us where we just were, the area we just came from.
Right, like it's kind of back up towards the hill a little bit.
And these footsteps, they sounded heavy and bipedal, like there were two distinct steps, not like the deer that we heard earlier, like the 4 steps or like scuttles or anything like that. Like, it was 2 heavy steps, and it took maybe 4 or 5 steps that we heard. Mm-hmm. And they were loud. They were sounded super close to us. And it was another weird aspect of that, where like it wasn't something that like came from far away and got louder. It was just there, suddenly, and it was loud, like it was directly behind us. And we turn around, and there is absolutely nothing there. Like, we are looking everywhere, and there is nothing. Right. And we're in the middle of the woods, but this was a fairly open area too, so it's not like,
and the trees were naked, I'm pretty sure.
No leaves.
There was no squirrels around. I mean, we would have seen squirrels or heard squirrels.
And there really wasn't anywhere for like something to hide either, but there was nothing there. We've already encountered the weird, like, whistling sound, the X, the deer, the tin can, the balloon, and now there's these footsteps behind us. And we are out in the middle of the woods, and the sun's going down because we had gotten, kind of
distracted.
Yeah, distracted by a lot of different stuff. So now it's starting to get dark, and there's footsteps, and there's nothing there, So this was about the time that I legitimately started to get a little bit freaked out of like, okay, like this is what you see in horror movies, right? Like these 2 idiots go off into the woods. They don't tell anybody where they're going. Like they've never been there before, and they don't come back, One other thing after the footsteps too, that was weird, but I don't really know anything about what it could have been. We heard like this weird, like almost like a gurgling sound. Yeah. And it sounded like really far in the distance, like nowhere near us.
Though.
Yeah.
It was like in the distance back over the hill.
Yeah. it sounded like, man, I don't even know. It was like such a weird.
A turkey gobble, but dying, like a dying turkey.
Yeah,
but gurgling, kind of.
It definitely sounded like a death throw or something, you know, like, it was just so strange. I've never heard any sound like that, or any animal that makes a sound like that. But it was also far away, and like that was almost just too much to even think about after everything else. So, you know, at that point I was just like, okay, we've got to get the fuck out of here. Like, we can't be here any longer, you know, but at the same time, like we were so close.
We were determined.
We were determined, but we were also really close now to the marker. So I was like, all right, let's just go to the marker. We'll find the cave, make sure that it is there. We'll get the hell out of here, and then we'll come back another day, like when we dedicate like a whole day to it, you know. Then we'll know where the cave is. We can go straight to it, and everything will be fine. So, you know, we trudge on despite everything, and, you know, just trying not to think about the weirdness of it all, and the implications that there could be something you can't see out there with you that's, you know, stalking you, right? You know, you don't want to think about that. So, like, we made our way to the marker. We get to the marker probably after another 10, 15 minutes, and there's just nothing there. And that's when it really hit me. It's like, oh yeah, like, you're the dumbass that just decided to randomly put your finger somewhere. Like, of course it's not here. Like, why would you think that it was here? Like, yeah, it may be in this general area, but it's definitely not here. So we looked around that area, and we could not find anything. So then, just on top of everything else, like, at that point, I was pissed off. Like, I was pissed off at myself for being an idiot, but also, like, just super frustrated. It's like, okay, like, we just went through all this and we didn't even find the cave. Like, what do we do now, you know? And especially because, like, the way the hill went down, it looked like it started to level off a little bit. So it looked like an old kind of service or logging road that had been, like, really overgrown. So I was like, all right, it makes more sense if we can just get to this road and then just sort of follow it out of the woods. And then, like, it looks like it maybe doubles back to the road at some point. So then we'll just get to the road, and then we'll just walk up the road to the car instead of trying to go back through these woods when you can't see anything at dark, you know, in dark, and then up the hill. And, you know, I was like, we'll just take our chances this way. So then we start to follow this road out, and we get to, like, the edge of the wooded area to where you can see, like, it starts to be open land again. And we're almost up to that point. And when we look to the right, and there's, like, a cliff face and stuff, and a lot of big boulder looking things. And then there's a hole. So on our right is the cave that we were looking for. Wow. On our way out, you know. And so, you know, we go up to it, and I think right away we kind of knew it wasn't the one that they went to in Hellier, because this particular cave, like, it's a super small opening, one that you really do have to, you know, crawl into.
Belly crawl.
Yeah. You have to crawl into it a little ways, and then it opens up, and it's massive. And it's, I swear, man, it's amazing.
Beautiful.
It's one of the most amazing things. But, we kind of knew it wasn't really the cave that we had set out to find, you know. But we still, like, we hung around a little bit. Jessica crawled in a little bit, even though it was dark and we couldn't see anything. And I was like a nervous wreck watching her the whole time. It's like, okay, it's like, number one, something in there is going to grab you. Some kind of cave goblin or something's going to grab you. And then what am I going to do? Or you're going to be in there safe, and then whatever's been stalking us out here is going to grab me. You know? So I was like, just go in, like, see if it opens up, and then just get out. Like, we need to get out of here. Like, I want to go home at this point. Like, I don't want to be in these woods any longer, you know. I was like, now we know this cave's here, so I dropped another marker, like one that was precise this time. So I was like, okay, we can get back to it. Like, we'll come back tomorrow, another day, whatever, just see.
I crawled all the way through to, like, where it opened up, but I didn't crawl into it because it was just too dark, and I was already nervous as it is crawling. Like, you know, I mean, you think about it, and some people don't realize how confined you feel when you're in a cave. surrounded by nothing but hard, heavy rock, and you're conscious of that the whole time. And it's just, that belly crawl, when it's that small, my goodness, you're already nervous. And I wasn't about to go all the way through.
It sounds like I'm a large fella, and I feel like it'd be like Winnie the Pooh in the tree.
Right. You could totally do it, man. We actually, we took Kyle out to that cave after this experience, which we get to that too, but.
Yeah, let's keep going. I'm on the edge here.
Yeah, so, Jessica checked it out, and she said, it did look like it started to open up back there, so we were like, okay, like, we'll come back, another day, and we'll explore this cave. Because it, like, even the outside of it, like, looked really cool. Like, it's kind of your typical, like, a cave, for even someone who's never seen a cave, but probably thinks of a cave. Like, I feel like this is the type of cave they would think of in their heads, Yeah. Like, literally just the rock face, and then there's, like, this kind of small hole that is, like, when you step far enough back, the hole's sort of black. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, it was awesome, and we did want to check it out, even though we did know, like, it wasn't one that they went to in Hellier. But anyway, she crawls back out, and then we finally, like, we get out of the woods, we walk across these fields out to the road, and then we have, like, a small walk, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile, maybe a little bit longer than that, back up the road to where we parked our car. We get in the car, and we're finally like, okay, like, we're safe, like, we can really start to try to digest some of this now, like what we just experienced, like the whole thing, it wasn't just one or two things, like it was a whole slew of things that progressively got kind of weirder, so we go up the road a little ways once we start to head out. And like I said, this was a little tiny road, so there were no places you could turn around or anything. So we drove it actually wasn't very far, because up ahead of us there was a turn. So it turned to the left to the point to where, like, you couldn't see what was beyond the turn. But we go up there, and then right there on our left is the cave that we came here to find. Literally just on the side of the road. This was obviously that cave, and so we were like, okay, like, what the hell? Like, we just went through all this stuff, and the cave is literally right here.
We just didn't drive far enough.
Yeah.
Like, we were just right there.
Like 500 more feet, and we would have seen it.
Yeah.
And been like, but then again, like, we would have seen it, maybe check that cave out, and then where would we be?
We would have never found that cave. We wouldn't have seen the deer, the X, the cans, the balloons, the footsteps. Like, that is so much. and we might not be talking to you right now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Because the other stuff is what pulled us in. So this cave is just right there. And it's even weirder because it was just so close to us, and like I said, when we were heading out there trying to find a place to park, I was kind of just sort of eyeballing it on my map of like what looks the closest to this marker, and I decided that spot did. And it turned out that was the very last spot that we could have pulled over without having to go further and then seeing this cave and then never experiencing any of that stuff, you know. But instead, we chose the other path, which we made this straight line to a marker that I placed being an idiot and then experienced all these weird things along the way. Like, even if I would have just put in the regular coordinates like any sane person would have, we would have gone a different route. So, like, we never would have seen the deer, the X, the cans, the balloon, any of it. Because there was a much simpler way to get to that cave if only I had just put those coordinates in. So that was really, even now thinking back on it, even though that was, over a year ago now, like, it's still mind-blowing to me. And I don't know really what to make of it. You know what I mean?
I can relate completely, 100%.
Yeah.
I know it was probably unnerving when you were going through it, but just hearing it from my perspective, it really sounds like you were kind of just being guided to find that.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the viewpoint we've had on it all along. And I think even the fact that we're where we are right now with the various projects and pursuits just, reinforces that 100%.
Yeah.
There's no other way to look at it, for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we were meant to experience that. We were meant to see that stuff, find that stuff, and we were meant to take it a step further and keep following the signs. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
the synchronicities. And really, there is one more. It's kind of a small one, but when we were finally on our way out, we had got turned around, and we were heading out. Like, I looked at my phone and we were kind of talking about it a little bit. And at this point, like, we weren't like Facebook friends with like any of the Somerset people. Like, we had literally just met Kyle that day. Like, we hadn't met anybody else. Like, so we weren't friends with any of them. Jessica, I think, was like, you should tell Kyle about this. And I was like, yeah. It's like, I think I should. And like, I looked at my phone because something popped up that I had a notification. And, the notification wasn't anything, but then like on the people you may know suggestion thing, the first person on there was Kyle. And like I said, we had no mutual friends at that point or anything, I don't think. So like, and I had never seen him pop up on there before. So it was just another little thing of like, yep, like I'm supposed to tell Kyle about it,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we ended up doing, like at my job at the time, I was traveling around the state, pretty much going everywhere in Kentucky. And I was actually down and around Somerset a lot. So pretty much every day at work, if I was in the area, I would drive to Somerset or, and stop by the museum and talk to Kyle and just kind of hang out and, share the stuff we had been doing. He would always tell me stuff that, Nathan, him and Darian were doing with the pennyroyal research and everything.
Had pennyroyal come out at that point?
No, this was when pennyroyal was in its, maybe not infant stages, but they were at the beginning of it to where they were really starting to dig in heavy to all the stuff you heard. And so, yeah, Kyle would kind of keep us up to date on the stuff they were looking into and finding. And, we told him about our experience out there. And that's when he asked if we would be interested in donating the balloon and the tin cans to the museum. So we were like, hell yeah, we would. Like, I'll bring it to you right now,
Right.
But yeah, we just kind of kept in contact with Kyle and, became friends. And, like I said, Kyle's an awesome guy, man. And every chance that I got that I was down there, I would stop by and talk to him, In the process of talking to Kyle about various things is really when I guess another gear kicked in with all the weirdness for us and kind of is responsible to getting us here. Talking to Kyle, I had this theory. I was like on a kick about like vibrations and everything. And it was something to do with the episode in Hellier where, I believe they're doing the Estes method and Dana hears the 3 tones or whatever.
Yes.
Do you remember that part? Yeah. So I was like, I had it in my head. I was like convinced that like I knew like what it meant. And it was, all about the vibrations of the 3 distinct tones and everything. So like one day at work, I had stopped by the museum and I was talking with Kyle and kind of telling him about, my ideas on the vibrations, like everything is vibration, everything is constantly moving, the table in front of you, the glass, like whatever, it's all vibrating and just a chaos of movement. Right.
Yep.
So I was like, it makes sense that vibrations play such an important part in pretty much everything, And so we were kind of just talking about that sort of stuff. One important part about this is, are you familiar with the comedian Bill Hicks?
Familiar with, to the extent that the name sounds very familiar.
All right. Do you like Tool by any chance?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So do you know, God, I can't think of the song now, but I think it's Third Eye at the beginning of that where they have the quote, today a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream and we're the imagination of ourselves. Do you recall hearing that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So that's a quote by Bill Hicks.
Okay.
And he was a
All right.
comedian, and apparently Maynard was, I don't know if they had met and they were friends at one point, or I can't remember when Bill Hicks died, but Maynard was really into it, so he has a couple of Bill Hicks quotes on some Tool songs. But that quote, I've always loved that quote, and it's always stuck with me, even if I didn't fully understand why. I've still just always loved it. But then when we started looking into more of this stuff, especially the vibration aspect of everything, that quote kind of started to mean even more, And so I had it in my head that day when we were talking about all this stuff with Kyle, that I was I want to mention that quote to him. I want to know if he's ever heard that or what he thinks, I want to mention that quote. So we're talking with Kyle, and I completely forget to mention the quote. I never bring it up. But one important part of this is that Kyle, this is when he tells me about the Law of One and the Raw Material books. So I had never heard about these books or this idea of the channeling, this being, who referred to himself as Raw. Mm-hmm. But I'd never heard of it. Kyle brought it up, and I was blown away by the idea of it. And so on the way home, he mentioned the books, and they're the Raw Material. I think there's 5 books. So I was looking it up on my phone, on Amazon, just because I was going to see how much the books cost, what it was really all about, kind of read some reviews and stuff. So I randomly, if you use Amazon too, if you search for something, you'll find 100 different possibilities, of
Yep.
places you can buy that same item. So it brought up a lot of different places you could buy these books. And I was kind of scrolling with my finger looking at them all, and I just randomly picked one to look at the reviews. And then I just randomly scrolled down to the bottom to a random review. The first review that the phone stopped on was by a guy, the name, it just said Nathan P. I'm sure you're familiar.
Yep.
Nathan P. Isaacs, right? In
Yep.
Somerset. So I was okay, well that's weird. Especially because Kyle had just told me about these books, Mm-hmm. And then I scrolled down. I didn't read this guy's entire review because it was very lengthy and in-depth.
That sounds like me.
Yeah, right? Yeah, knowing now, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I scrolled all the way down just to the bottom of his review, and it was the Bill Hicks quote. The exact quote, word for word,
Wow.
that I've always loved and wanted to tell Kyle, that's how this Nathan P. guy ended his review of these books that Kyle just told me about and I was fascinated by. So immediately I'm okay, yep, now we have to buy these books. We have to figure out what this is all about. And I think it was that same day, I took a screenshot on my phone of the Nathan P. stuff and I sent it to Kyle, and he was like, that's crazy. What? and it turns out it wasn't Nathan. It was just a random guy.
No.
Yeah. It wasn't even Nathan, that did it, which I think would be in some respects even crazier if it was, but yeah, it was just a random guy with the initials of, Nathan P. So I was okay, that's weird. That same day, I can't remember exactly what happened now because there's been so much, but that day too, after Kyle told me about the Raw stuff, is when I really had my first 11/11 synchronicity. And the 11/11 stuff started then, and it's still going on today at a year plus later, and the 11/11 stuff is, it's just another layer on top of everything, that was kind of, I took it as just more of a guiding us along, another sign of yep, you're on the right path,
Yep.
Keep going.
That is awesome.
Oh, what about the kid at the Little Caesars? When did that happen?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of Raw stuff. But, okay, let me get to this real quick. So when the 11/11 stuff started, I started, really quickly started kind of correlating that with the Raw stuff because of some little synchronicities too. So then, I started trying to look at, numerology, and I have no idea about numerology, and this besides what little bit I've read. But it talked about like 11 being, like a power number and, really significant and all this stuff. And it even mentioned like when coupled with 11 to make 1111, like it sort of signified this spiritual awakening, like a journey of your higher self kind of thing, like a search for knowledge sort of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, that fits everything like the way that I've been thinking and feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that kind of started with the Raw stuff, and the Raw stuff in general was just, I was fascinated by the idea of it, and like all of the stuff that is in those books and everything. I felt like it sort of started to give me like a way of thinking about things that I've always thought about, but like didn't have any context for. And didn't really know how to like arrange the pieces, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it kind of gave me a framework, I felt like. So it was super significant. And then the Raw stuff just kept popping up everywhere. Like everywhere I would look, it would be 1111 or 111 and Raw, just everywhere. So this actually has to do with a little bit with Hellier too. Shortly after meeting Kyle, I had mentioned to him, that I was from Pikeville. This was around Christmas time. So we were going to be going into Pikeville because I've still got some family there. And I was like, okay, when we go back to Pikeville, now that we know like some of this other stuff, like I wanted to go back to the tunnel that they go to in season 1. Like, and I want to try like our own sort of investigation and like maybe even try the Estes method, just some kind of experiment. Cause we had never done anything like that up to this point. And our first trip to the tunnel was really just a kind of looking at the place and just saying like, hey, like we were there, So I tell Kyle about that, and he actually loans me the spirit box that he has, which I thought was just amazing because at this point, I had met Kyle a handful of times. I wouldn't, I guess, quite consider us friends, but here we are like just telling him like, yeah, I'm going, 3 hours away, we're going to go to his cave. And he's like, oh, here, we'll take my $80 piece of equipment. Yeah. It was just like kind of a sign of what a cool guy he is.
Yeah, it's really, that's how he seems. Like he's just such a friendly and personable guy that even though it doesn't make sense that you're friends, like you can't logic your way into it. Like, I think if you talk to Kyle, like if he talks to you, you're friends with him.
Oh yeah.
And if he doesn't want to talk to you, you're not. That's the impression I get.
Oh yeah. And that's spot on. So you nailed it. But anyways, we go to Pikeville, we go back to the tunnel from season 1, and we set stuff up. We've got our headphones and, the spirit box now, like we were going to try like an Estes method. Cause that was something I've been fascinated with, since watching Hellier, just this idea of like seemingly legitimate communication with something. I've always had a problem with spirit boxes prior to any of this, just because the susceptibility you have to just, hear what you want to hear kind of thing, especially when you're with a group of people and you're talking and, it may say something that you have no idea what it says, but then someone will be like, oh, well, it said boy. And then you're like, oh yeah, it did say boy. You don't know what it said. You're just, but that kind of mentality, I've always had a problem with the spirit box. So when they introduced the Estes method with Hellier, or at least introduced it to us, I was, fascinated by the concept of like, okay, like here, this kind of takes away all of the stuff that I had a problem with the spirit box, So we were definitely eager to try it. But when we get there to the tunnel, we set everything up, and like right away, again, stupid me, I had forgotten the cord to the headphones. So like right away, like a Estes method session, at least the way that they did it, was out of the question because we had no headphones. So I was like, okay, well, this is just great. Like, then I started to be frustrated again. Like what the hell, And this is important too, to kind of double back a little bit. This is something I think they mention and kind of talk about with Hellier, just sort of the idea of frustration in general, of how like, one path you're on may sort of end abruptly or take a wild turn that leaves you frustrated, but then there's usually something else that happens that keeps you going if you look hard enough. This is sort of the way that I felt for an extended period of time there. Like, the stuff initially happened to us and we were like, so like just kind of diving headfirst into it. And like, we started seeing more synchronicities and like uncovering more weird stuff, but then it would just sort of kind of dry up, and I would be like, okay, like, well, what are we supposed to do now? Like, where do we turn? Like, what do I do? And I would start to get frustrated, but then like at the moment of that like frustration, it's like something else would happen to be like, it's like, it's okay. Like, you're still good. Like, just keep going. Like, this is the sign you needed, kind of thing. So like the tunnel experiment was just, in my mind, a complete failure. And I was so excited about going there and doing our own thing and like getting some kind of evidence of something, Like, in my mind, it was like, yeah, this, like, we're going to get something that's going to, take us to the next part, whatever. But we got nothing. Like, we didn't even set it up right because of me. And I was just like, this sucks, like, I was so frustrated. And that day was actually the day we were coming back to Lexington. So on the drive home, it's about a 3-hour drive. Like, the whole time, I am just so frustrated and just upset, like, that we didn't get anything there, because I was so sure that we would. And, like, I'm sure in the car you could probably feel the negativity and frustration coming off of me. But
and I mean, it's a long drive for us, so it was like the chance that, to do it while we were there would have been perfect.
Yeah. Without having to make like a separate trip, just for that. But we get almost back home and we're hungry, so we just decide to go to Little Caesars and grab a pizza. I'm still this entire way super frustrated. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Like, what does all this mean? Like, why does it even happen? Like, like, I was just done with it. Like, I don't know what to do. So I walk into Little Caesars after ordering the pizza online, and I go to the counter and there's a guy there. He hands me my pizza, and I notice on his forearm he has a tattoo of the Eye of Ra. And I'm just, right. I just stop and I'm like, oh, okay, like, are you serious? And like, I see on his other arm he has like the Eye of Horus too. And so like, I stop and I'm sure I gave him a weird look because he's just kind of looking at me, and I'm like, I like your tattoo, man. I'm like, do you know what that is, like, what it means? And he's like, yeah, it's the Eye of Ra. I'm like, okay. It's like, I just wanted to make sure you knew what it was. And,
like, are you real? Are you a real person? Or
like, just wanted to make sure you didn't think it was just a cool design, And I was like, yeah. It's like, it is. I was like, Ra has been Ra's been popping up a lot for me lately. And he just like smiled at me and he was like, that's awesome. It's like, that means it's you're doing good or something like that. I'm like, yeah, it does. And then I walk out, and this is not, I don't know, I don't want to be mean or anything, but this is not the typical person you would look at just on the outside and think would be into anything like that, who would have any clue what the Eye of Ra was.
Or to comprehend anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
You don't make that mistake anymore, though, do you?
Exactly. No.
Nope.
It's the classic, don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so after that, the frustration, I walked out of that place holding the pizza, and the frustration and everything, it was just gone. Like, it was just swept away. I was like, all right. Like, if as if I needed another sign that we were kind of on the right path, right?
Yes.
The Ra stuff, I mean, is just crazy, and I can't remember what I was talking about before that.
Well, I can take you back because I wanted to point something out that is very interesting. You were talking about the 11/11 storm that you're still presently weathering, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked up 11/11 in the NAEQ cipher?
God, have we?
I think I did actually when we first started experiencing it, but I have no idea, like no recollection of what it was.
This is it's kind of paradoxical. It's really interesting. So if you type in 11 space 11, right?
Yeah.
it returns 11 matches. And number 2, which is notated by lowercase I, is 11 as all.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
How about that?
Oh, God. That's crazy. And just makes even more sense with everything, you know?
Yep. And we can go a little bit weirder into it. Number 11, the return is X. And of course, all the returns are noted by, Roman numeral lowercase, and the lowercase x, which is 10, says Y. Like the word Y, not the letter Y.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting.
That's so strange.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, but that's awesome though.
And then, and then number 9, IX, is us. So if you look for 1111, the II result is 11 as all. Number 11 is X. 10, noted by X, is Y. 9 is us. Y us.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. So you just blew my
Welcome
mind
to the
again.
weird.
And that's so strange because, like I said, I know that when it first started happening, I tried some semblance of the 11s in the cipher, but I don't remember any of what came out.
And I feel like that would have been significant enough to remember, but
right, yeah,
that's crazy.
That's so weird.
Yeah, when you're looking at it, it's really crazy. Like you get trapped in this 1111, and a lot of people do. I haven't, but I can understand what it would be like to see that all the time.
Right, which now it's just a thing that happens.
Yeah.
And it just happens so casually.
Yeah. And it's almost every day too. Like, but at this point, like, it's happened so much that we're just, it's still cool, I guess, but when it's the more mundane things, I don't pay a ton of attention to it. But if something significant still happens and it's 1111 or 111 or something, then I still kind of pay a little bit more attention to it. But the whole thing for me was just fascinating. As someone who had never really taken a hard look at sort of that side of things before, especially with like the numerology and stuff. And then it's like, here I was sort of thinking about what we were experiencing and what I was personally going through in my head as somewhat of like an awakening of sorts. And then here, like, Kyle introduces the raw material to me, which is the same day that the 1111 stuff starts. And then the 1111 is like, oh yeah, that means spiritual awakening and all this stuff. Like, it was at that point, it was too hard to ignore, but it was still just like, it fit perfectly with everything that I had been feeling and thinking about. I just, like I said, I didn't really have a name for it at that point, but it fit perfectly. So ever since then, like, we've just been following it, every new sign, every new synchronicity, we've just every step of the way been.
We just go with it.
Yeah, we just kind of go with it.
And it's just been so strange ever since, in like the best way. Yeah. Though, I mean, the people we've met and the people that we can call friends now, right, and just it's been incredible.
I mean, here, like, we could now call all the Somerset people friends pretty much. Like, we've spent a lot of time with Kyle and Nathan and Darian. Dan Dutton is such an amazing person and just wonderful friend to us that I still to this day can't. I mean, it's hard for me sometimes being there at Dan's, working with him on stuff, and I'm just like, why are we here? Like, how the hell did I get here?
Right. And just like a year or so ago, he wasn't in our lives. It's like, what did we do before this?
Yeah, but it's just, all this stuff has led us to all these amazing people and all these new, ideas and pursuits. And it's been incredible.
Lots of learning.
Yeah.
I have noticed you've been spending a lot of time at Dandyland with Dan Dutton.
Oh, yeah.
So can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. Please. So yeah, we, like I said, we met Dan, right around a year ago is when we first met him. And we met him through, Nathan and Darian, and Dan invited us over one day when Nathan and Darian were there, and we spent some time with him. And I mean, since then, like, we've become good friends, and we are actually working with Dan. We go to Somerset to Dandyland every Sunday, just us and Dan, and kind of working on some various projects. Some that we've already put out under the studio page.
Yep.
Which is just some of Dan's folk songs that are songs that he's written to go along with scenes from his opera, the Secret Commonwealth series, which is 4 operas, and each opera has different scenes and songs. Shortly after meeting Dan, we were at Dandyland for what was just an otherworldly, magical night and time. But during this, he brought out his guitar and started playing these songs. And I was blown away by the songs. Like, I absolutely loved them. And we had never heard any of them before. But he starts playing, and then, some of the other guys like bring out instruments and start playing and singing. And it just turns into this just crazy, like, sort of concert almost for just Jessica and I. And I'm just blown away by it, And at that point, even during like some of the songs, like, I started having all of these ideas flash into my head. And at this point, like, I had known that I wanted to do more with like the video production stuff. Like, I wanted to start producing more stuff like outside of the weird paranormal stuff that we had going with the project. And so I started, just all of these ideas and thoughts started coming to me. And I was like, I want to document Dan, like, I want to document like every aspect of this place and of him, these songs, especially, like, I loved those songs. So that's kind of what we started doing with Dan, like the first sort of set of projects where he just grabbed his guitar, sat down, we set up in his house there, and he would play, 4 or 5 songs, whatever we could get to during the day. And, I'd bring them back, separate it all, put them out there. And that's what you kind of see with some of those songs, which I think we called it Songs from the Omnichronic. And we did a handful of those, while it was cool, and it was cool for both of us, because this is the first time that Dan had ever like really recorded the songs in that fashion. Some of the songs he had never like officially recorded in any kind of way, but a lot of the other ones, when he recorded them for the operas, he recorded them with like other band members and singers and stuff too. So this was just Dan and his guitar. So he had never recorded any of the songs this way, which was really cool for us too, just because here we were getting to do anything with Dan, like, I was still just amazed by that, but also getting to do something that was seemingly bringing some value to him, that he had never seen his own songs in this light before, like in this way. So that was really cool too. But there was something, I wouldn't really say missing, but it just wasn't really connecting with people the way that we had hoped it would. So we came up with the idea of like trying to take maybe each individual song and also adding sort of like a backstory to it, like kind of what the song's about, how it came into his head, what it's all about, what the meaning is, and then kind of in some way put that along with the song so that people get some context with it. And it's not just a tune that they have no idea what it's about or where it came from, That actually led us to the Snow Project, which is what we have ongoing now and what we've been working on for the past several weeks. And it's really just, Snow is another one of his songs that was, in one of the operas. And it's just sort of the first one we picked to try this out on. So what we're doing with it is, kind of it's hard to really classify it, because we've tried to stay away from that as well, of like kind of pigeonholing ourselves with something, saying that it's going to be this or this, and then, we didn't want to limit ourselves with it, especially since none of us had done anything like this.
Yeah, we kind of don't even really know where it's going, but we're doing it.
Yeah, and the final form is still a little bit up in the air.
Yeah.
But I know what's in my head is kind of it's going to be a sort of like a short film, where the first part of the film is going to be kind of like a narrative story of the story behind the song. And then the second half of it is going to be Dan performing the song along with, hopefully some strange out there visuals to go along with it to really hammer home the strangeness of it all. Because a lot of Dan's work deals with lucid dreams. And Snow is no different. Like Snow, the idea of Snow for him came from a lucid dream he had. And so with all of this work, we're dealing with this other world, like this dream world that, may or may not be a real thing. Like who's to say, there are a lot of different theories on dreams. One that I've always kind of prescribed to is that, what if the dream world and what we experience when we're dreaming is some real plane, some realm, other universe, other reality, something that we are tapping into in our subconscious while we're asleep, So who's to say that the stuff that happens in dreams doesn't really happen in some way, somewhere?
Or has happened, or will happen somewhere else,
Yeah.
And so the idea with the lucid dreams, where a lot of Dan's work has come from, has just been fascinating to me, because it's like what one person may look at is just being a strange dream where he got a weird idea from. What if it's really he was traveling to some other place and meeting these other beings, these other intelligences who were then giving him ideas and information that he brought back to this plane, So,
a lot of those creatures and characters are in his artwork.
Yeah.
And he's got his fan base. He's got a lot of people that love what he does and what he's done, theater and art, both. But I've always kind of felt like a lot of them don't understand it, I guess, or they're not in that mindset to understand it. Not that
they appreciate the art.
Yeah, they appreciate the art part because it's art, but it's a lot deeper than I think a lot of people can even imagine. But I love it.
There are so many layers to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are some that even we, after meeting with him for a few months now, just talking about some of this stuff, haven't even gotten to.
Yeah.
And even still, another really cool part of it is that there are new layers still that are being created with the work that we're doing with him, which is amazing in my mind. And I still cannot get over just that idea that we are somehow, working with this amazing guy who has done all these amazing things, and we're actually contributing something to his entire work. And
witnessing these things materialize. It is really unreal.
Yeah. And it's, a short year ago, before we wandered into the woods and found a tin can and balloon and stuff, this is never in a million years a place that I thought that I would ever be in my life,
Yeah.
At that point, I hadn't even bought the first camera, the idea for the project stuff still hadn't formed in my mind, but now here we are pursuing video production stuff, working with incredible people, Dan, Nathan, Kyle, Darian, it's just crazy.
Yep. 100%.
You say that as if you understand.
No, I do. And
you've been there too.
It's really weird to hear you say some of the things that you guys have said, just because of how deeply it resonates with me and the connections that brought me to where I am right now. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the show, and if you're not, that's totally fine. Hopefully someday you'll be a big fan. But episode 6 of the show details a lucid dream that I had that really tied into a synchronicity with Hellier that put me where I am now.
Wow.
And so you tie in, Dan's work with lucid dreaming and his whole folklore and study and all of that, and how it connects to all this other weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then Hellier is just like this flaming catalyst that anybody that touches it like catches on fire.
Right.
And so it's I 100% relate.
One thing we didn't talk a lot about was the project, which is really kind of shows you the frame of mind we're in, I guess, because the project stuff is what started all of this, as far as like the reason I even bought my first camera was because I wanted to do this, like kind of in the vein of Hellier, this docuseries involving like the strangeness of Daniel Boone National Forest, which is a forest here in Kentucky. It's a massive forest. It spans like the entire length of the state almost, like even down to the Tennessee border. We wanted to do this film project for that, and that's what led me to buy the first camera. And then when I got the camera, I just sort of fell in love with it, and then that's what has led us up to the studio stuff. So now
it's still tied into the project stuff, but
for sure.
The studio is more the business.
Yeah. And pretty much moving forward, anything that we do will probably be released from the studio page as well. So like we have 2 pages right now. That's a long-winded way of saying this. We have 2 pages on Facebook. We have Beyond Sight Project and Beyond Sight Studios. Beyond Sight Project is, as I said, this idea we wanted to do with all this strangeness. And there's a lot of layers to that too. And I really do hope one day we get back to it, because it is something I really want to complete and get out there. But the project page is all about the strangeness. Like we want people to join that page. You can read all about like our journey up to this point. We've posted pretty much everything that we talked about today, maybe not some of the newer stuff, but I've honestly kind of neglected that page, but unfortunately. But I do want to get back to it. So, but if you want to join that page, you can read all about our weird stuff. And we encourage people to join the group too. Like we like collecting weird experiences and stories, especially, when they resonate with us and they're similar to our story. That's kind of one of the aspects of the project I wanted to do, was collect stories and be able to use those for other people. But the main thing is Beyond Sight Studios. And right now we have, the Facebook page, we have a YouTube channel and an Instagram page. All of those you can find us just at Beyond Sight Studios. And, pretty much any of the video work that we do moving forward is going to be posted to, those pages. So you can kind of see everything we're doing, even the strangeness with, Dan and the Pennyroyal guys, all the Somerset stuff.
We're also working on a new page for merchandise. It's mostly, I guess, stuff that I make, but it's also going to be the same Beyond Sight logo stuff.
Yeah, we tried to keep Beyond Sight for everything. But Jessica's making a lot of really cool jewelry and stuff like that we are going to hopefully have out there soon for people to see. We haven't really shown anybody any of the stuff yet.
Oil sprays.
Yeah.
Well, whenever that materializes, make sure you send me the link, and I will make sure that it's on our website so that everybody can find it.
For sure, man. Appreciate that.
All right, guys. Well, I think we got everything out there. There's so much more to this story, and I hope that we can get together again in the future and make a part 2 to this, because I know there's a lot more.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
To share. For this episode, I think we'll wrap it up. We'll see you on the next one. This is just awesome.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having us on here. This was, seriously, we're looking forward to this for so long.
Until next time, keep the fire going.